I wanted to talk about some stuff to do with my kitten's disappearance that didn't quite seem right, didn't sit with me right off the bat, didn't sit with me right. Just a bad feeling in my gut about it. One thing that really didn't make sense is that Cedar Island is a very small place. It's a small island. You can pretty much see clear across from one side to the other. You could be standing in front of the barn and you could see across to the ferry, and you could see across to the Baby's restaurant and the motel, and vice versa. And then it's surrounded by marsh and dune, and one side has beaches. The barn, she disappeared only a few yards behind the barn. And I searched around all back there. You could see in some of the videos I'll post, just dune backing up on a beach. I searched all around those marshes. I searched all around those dunes. I walked up the beach. I tracked her to some degree. The thing that does not make any sense, is really weirding me out, one of the bigger things is I didn't find a kill site, and I didn't find an eat site. I found other kill sites, and I found kill sites and I found eat sites. I found eat sites, at least, where the coyotes had killed two before. I found one that still had a seagull in it that had clearly been there since before my cat had disappeared. At least the remains of it were. Coyotes might eat most of their prey, but they still will leave stuff behind. Some things. More than just two little patches of fur that I found. 2 to 3 little patches of fur. Altogether, it added up to it could fit in the small little pocket palm of my hand. I have a small hand. Little tiny bit of her fur, and one little drop of blood on one of the patches of fur. They would have left more than that behind somewhere in the area. Even if they caught her right there where I found the fur, right out back behind the barn. Even if they caught her and killed her there, they wouldn't have taken her very far to devour her. There were all these eat sites around there that they'd clearly been using, and there was no sign of her in any of those sites. I never found any other trace of her except those few little patches of hair for her fur with one little drop of blood on it. And cats twist away from coyotes and dog stuff all the time, and I've seen her do that. Twist away from neighborhood dogs and stuff that were trying to catch her. She was a spry, scrappy little thing, and she was very special, and that was remarked upon by lots of people. She was tiny and petite and cute and almost completely white. She had a little bit of orange or reddish on her ears, so light that it looked pink, and it was the same color in rings around her tail, and the rest of her was white, and she had bright blue eyes. And it had been remarked several times by several people throughout the roughly year I had her, since I found her malnourished in an RV park. The comment has always been, she's a special cat. People coveting her. There's also, it pops up all the time if you look into cult activities and stuff that the creepier side of society gets into. I can't tell you how many times, quite a few times, I've stumbled upon information suggesting that people who do things like sacrifice animals to deities like white animals. They like to sacrifice white animals. That's their fave. As white as they can get them, as pure white. And white cats, it's hard enough to come by white animals to begin with, but white cats, all white cats, or mostly white cats, hard to find. With bright blue eyes and some pink, really hard to find and special. I know she wouldn't have gone with anybody. She did not trust a single soul other than me. She wouldn't let anyone else near her. My boy cat is a little bit more socialized to people, but even he will barely let people near him. She really wouldn't. She freaked out once when I tried to put her in the RV. When a friend of mine was in the RV. Because I was going to drive us all into town for a few hours. She was fine on my shoulder. I picked her up. La, 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 la. Okay, mommy. Let's go in the RV. And as soon as I was putting her in the RV and she saw my friend in the RV already, she freaked out and like clawed her way away from me and over my shoulder and ran off. But still, when we came back from town, like 4 to 5 hours later, at least, she was waiting right there for me in the RV lot up in a tree. Climbed right down as soon as the RV pulled up. She was a smart cat. She was a smart, stray Texan cat. Born in an RV park to a bunch of different stray cats. Like, she looked like she had a few different kinds of breeds in her. But that's good. That typically makes a stronger, healthier cat, smarter cat. Like, mutts tend to be smarter than purebreds, in my observation. Just naturally. And then it's a matter of, like, are you training them? I think that's to do with, like, you know, anybody who knows about genetics, you want to spread the genes apart because you're going to get better results. I just know it didn't feel right. Something about a few things didn't feel right. That was one thing that didn't feel right. I tromped all around that island, in the dunes, all around behind that barn, I walked out into marsh, kind of sinking into some of it. I walked up and down the beach. I went over by the ferry. I walked around looking around back around the motel, behind the restaurant. Not a damn sign of her. Not one sign, except those a couple little patches of fur out back behind the barn. They would have left more than that. The coyotes, they caught her right there behind the barn. They would have taken her like a maximum of 2 miles, but there weren't 2 miles for them to take her. You know, like, they would have had to, if they took her any farther than really a few yards to a quarter mile away from the barn, they would have had to be dragging her across shallow water canals. I could understand them crossing those water canals on like a good day, a nice day, low tide, on their own. I don't see them taking a kill across those water canals to the mainland part. There were all these eat sites right around the barn, back in the dune area, and in the marsh. And there's no sign of her in any of them. No, nothing. No little bits, anything. Other than that, and some tracks. Other than the patches of fur and some tracks that suggested that she might have been snapped at, and they took a little bit of her right there behind the barn, but it looked like she got away and was running off into the dune area, and then being pursued. I don't know, but also, like, some of the tracks didn't look like coyote tracks. They looked like dog tracks. Yes, there's a difference. You know what to look for. There's a difference. First of all, dog tracks typically are bigger. Coyotes are on the smaller side compared to typical house dogs. And I know some dogs go out there. People walk their dogs out on that beach, but some of the tracks looked like dog tracks that were looked like they were following after tracks that looked very much like they were my kitten's tracks. She was petite. Like I said, she was malnourished and the runt of her litter. When I found her, she was on death's door. She wouldn't have survived. She was like a little skeleton compared to her brothers. She was never going to be big. She was already over a year old, and she still looked like a kitten. She was barely bigger than the size she was when I found her, at probably somewhere between 2 to 3 months. So if you know any bit about tracking, it's not hard to make out cat tracks from dog tracks, from fox tracks. First of all, the wild animals also tend to have like the nail indent at the end of the pads. The nail print. They have longer nails. No one's giving them manicures, you know. And then especially if you're dealing with cats, it's not hard to pick out little teeny tiny tracks and go like, those are hers. Just for people who might be questioning my ability to track, I'm not like an expert or anything, but I'm also not an idiot, and I can piece together, and I'm a trained visual artist, I can piece together the kinds of tracks that an animal will make based on its anatomy and how it carries itself. Another thing that really didn't sit well with me is how some people seem to be reacting to that, to her disappearance. A lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, like, I'm just sure some people might have just been wanting me to like not worry or stress, but it felt like it was more than that coming from some people. Like, some people really just wanted me to not look for her, forget about her, don't worry, she'll come back, or what. They just did not want me out there wandering around looking for her, making such a big deal about her. You know, at one point I was saying like, and then other things like they didn't want me to get a puppy. I was starting to feel that when people didn't want me getting, I was saying I was going to get a puppy, a blue heeler. I got a very strong sense from some people that like didn't like that idea. I was also talking about at one point when I was still holding out hope for her that she was hunkered down somewhere out there in the dunes, just scared to come out. And I found evidence that she had been walking around out there. Like, I found little tiny cat tracks out there a few days after she'd gone missing, and they were fresh. You could tell because they were on top of sand that had just been rained on. So it rained like the day after, or maybe 2 days after she disappeared. And I found fresh kitten tracks that looked just like her tracks. And I know there's some stray cats around there, but they were all bigger than her. And I'd made a point of like kind of looking at tracks that they made, because, you know, they would come around my RV and stuff, or walk past, or I'd see them walking somewhere, and go look at tracks that they make. Like, are they quite her size? No, she was the tiniest cat I saw on that island, and she made tiny little cat tracks. And I saw these tracks over top of the sand that clearly had been rained on. You know, you can tell when sand's been rained on. It just has those little, you know, indents in it from the rain. It's got that, you know, gravelly sort of pattern to it. I'm gonna get something to eat here. And her cat tracks were clearly made on top of that. So it was like she was out there, and I kept feeling like she was out there. And then one day it felt like she wasn't. She was gone. And it felt like people didn't want, for whatever reason, people didn't want me looking for her. Or, you know, didn't think I'd make it such a big deal about it. At one point I suggested, I brought it up like this. So I was like, and I brought it up with a few people, like, so anybody around here have, like, you know, dogs? It's probably good for hunting, tracking stuff down. And the initial response I got was, oh yeah, like, because it's people go there for duck hunting and stuff all the time. It's Huntersville out there, like, yeah, of course, lots of people around here have dogs that can sniff something out, blah, blah, blah. I was like, okay, good. Well, you think anybody around here would lend me their dog, or let me pay them to, like, just spend an hour bringing their dog out in the dunes with me? Lots of people bring their dogs out for walks on this beach anyway. Just see if we can sniff her down. I've got some of her fur. Sniff her out. Maybe she's hunkered down somewhere. And then the response turned to, no, nobody around here has a dog like that, can do that. And then I started talking about getting my own puppy, the blue heeler. there was, again, this very strong sense coming from quite a few people of, we don't want her getting a puppy. We don't want her getting a dog. We don't want her looking for that cat. Distract her from looking for the cat. Tell her it's fine. When, like, I don't know, there are other people who, you know, I've mentioned to randomly, like, oh, you know, my cat's missing. And, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I hope you find her. Not like, yeah, she's fine. She's on the other side of the island. Don't bother looking for her. Like, she'll come back eventually. Or maybe she walked off with another family. Again, like, I know my cat. That cat wouldn't have walked off with anybody else but me. Really creepy stuff. That's just and so, like, people do crazy stuff. People will take an animal. Sometimes they just like it. They think it's pretty. Daddy, get me that pretty kitten. Well, what does Daddy do if the kitten's not for sale? And he thinks he can get away with it. And he has no scruples. Mm-hmm. Or again, crazy people do crazy stuff. There's a good portion of crazy people out there that, you know, for whatever reason think they'll get treats if they sacrifice an animal to some weird-ass deity. And again, the trend that I see is that white animals are preferred. White cats are preferred. And I also have to weigh that against the fact that I have actually been spending 2 years tracking a cult that has a few times dropped hints to me that they're keeping tabs on me. Like that they knew where I was staying out in LA. Stuff like that. And again, I also have to factor in stuff like, I know that cult communities exist where there's a community operating, or there's a cult operating within that community secretly. And they make up a good portion. Like, they tend to amass in certain areas. Whether it's because, like, the ley lines, you know, the fault lines of the earth align right there in certain spots. It's like certain spots they seem to like. And will gravitate towards those spots. And then they slowly just kind of embed themselves in the community. And then it's a matter of, seriously, like, half the community won't know that the other half is sort of in cahoots with one another and doing cray stuff behind closed doors. There are quite a few documented incidences of this, guys. And I've heard testimony from too many people raised in these kinds of communities where it was like they would try to get out. They would try to run away as kids, as older kids, realizing like their situation they're in was really abusive. And like, you know, they'd run off, they'd run to like a neighbor, they'd run to a local cop, they'd run to someone who was in the cult. And they would be taken right back home. Because the kids were still young and didn't realize how much it spanned, like how vast it was. The fact that they didn't realize like half of their town was in the cult. So not every place is going to be like this, but just certain special spots tend to attract these people for whatever reason. And Cedar Island looks just like one of those spots. Like, it looks like the kind of place they would love weirdo cult people. So there are some things about that area. I'll make a little video kind of pointing out how it could be very likely considered to be special by people who are into like all kinds of occult, mystic stuff, esoteric stuff. So I just wanted to point out, I'm going to post some videos of my kitten, either before or after this video, showing when I found her, some more videos I was taking out in the dunes. I was trying to keep track of where I was finding some of her tracks and like where I was finding some of her anything that could point to like what happened to her. I found some fur that wasn't hers near the fur that was hers, and I think I might get it tested Like, one person tried to convince me, so it's Mina. She tried to convince me that it wasn't her fur. I know my cat's fur. She was the one of the people tried to convince me, like, oh no, she's just hanging on the other side of the island. Or, sometimes cats go off with other people. It's like, I know my cat. She's not hanging out on the other side of the island for days, ignoring me. Especially when I didn't say any of this stuff to her. I just kind of was like, oh, please don't treat me like I'm stupid. And all the while also talking down to me, so kind of like, oh, I'm an idiot. Like, well, sometimes cats leave and go off with other families. Like I was fucking 5 years old. Thank goodness for my patience with children, because I really wanted to be like, honey, I'm almost 3 times your age, and I know my cat better than you do, and I think I know a bit more about animal nature and human nature and so on and so forth. Don't talk down to me. Just in a real kind of like, ugh. Anyway. Yeah, and trying to tell me, like, she's probably just hanging out on the other side of the island, down by the ferries. Like, I've called for her plenty times from my RV on one side of the island, and then watched her book it over to me from the other side of the island, by the ferry, by the motel. That night that she disappeared, right before she disappeared, she followed me from the barn, because I went into the barn first to see what Jorge needed for Buck, the horse that was sick. Jorge sent me over to the bar, where I actually spent my own money, by the way, to get 2 Coronas, 2 beers for Buck. He said it was going to help the colic. He was going to add, like, garlic to the beer, and you're supposed to give that to the horse. I've never done that. I watched him do it, but he had me go to the restaurant, to Babery's, and request 2 room temperature beers. And I remember they didn't have room temperature, they just had chilled. So I grabbed 2 chilled Coronas, paid like $7. She followed me from the barn when I left the barn on my bike, rode on my bike from the barn over to the Babery's, followed me the whole way over, stopped at the little playground area, and sat there and waited for me to get done in the Babery's restaurant, and then proceeded to follow me all the way back to the RV. I stopped at the RV to get a cigarette for Jorge, because he asked to bum a cigarette from me. And that was the last time I saw her. I gave her a pet as I was leaving the RV. I decided to let them stay out a little bit longer while I was just going to walk over to the barn a few yards away and help Jorge out with the horse. And I figured it wouldn't take longer than about an hour. So I was just going to let them stay out a little bit longer. Typically, they would have been in the RV with me, hunkered down at that point. Also, the hour in which she went missing, very telling. These people are very into numbers, numerology. It's true, if you boil down everything in life, you can boil everything in life, existence, down to numbers. If you were so inclined to do so. And lots of people take that seriously, too. And will do dirty deeds at certain times of day. That's another thing I noticed. She went missing at a specific time. She went missing between the hour of 9 and 10. It was the last time I saw her. She was following me. Like, she was racing me while I was slowly riding on my bike from one side of the island to the other. And she was doing that all the time. Like, that's the kind of cat I had. That's how close I am with my animals, with my pets. Like, for people to be suggesting to me all this stuff, first of all, that I know is not my cat's behavior. And secondly, it wasn't just that. It was a very strong feeling coming from some of them. Not all, but from some of them that was very much felt like, get her to stop thinking about it. Get her to stop looking for the cat. Get her, distract her away from it. So on and so forth. And also then combined with people feeling like people didn't want me to have a dog or get a puppy. People didn't want me to take a dog out there to see if maybe he could sniff her out, hunkered down, hiding somewhere, maybe slowly suffering from a wound, maybe slowly dying. Like, people didn't want me looking for her. There were people who did not want me looking for her. I'll just go out and say it. Go ahead. Like, my gut was saying it, screaming it. Do people not want me? It's not like I was telling people, rally and help me find my cat. No, I was telling people what I was like, where my progress was trying to find her, what I was planning to do to go find her, go back out in the dunes, like, after lunch, and there was just a very strong sense coming from quite a few people that, like, they didn't want me doing that. They didn't want me out there looking for her. Again, really weird. Really effing weird. And the weird that when I looked in the spot where I found her fur, I looked there before and didn't see anything. And then was told, when Jorge realized that I wasn't going to give up looking for her, at least not for quite a while, that I was seriously going to be out there roaming around looking, that's when he told me, like, oh, yeah, I heard a cat, like, sounded like a cat getting killed out back the other night when we were in here with Buck. And right over there, and, like, kind of pointed. At first he was vague about it, and I was like, can you show me more specifically where you think you heard the sound coming from? And then he, like, sort of, maybe over there. And he didn't even really point, like to the area where I found the fur. And I couldn't go out there immediately. I had to finish doing my work, and then I ran back to the RV to, like, switch out boots and stuff. And and then when I got out there, I looked around the spot, roughly around the area where he was pointing, and I found some of her fur. I didn't see it there before when I went and looked. Didn't see it there before. It's weird that I saw it there after that spot was sort of pointed out to me. It's weird that Jorge claims he heard a cat being attacked out back behind the barn, or even any animal. Like, he saw my cats out there only a few minutes before. He said he heard a cat being attacked, like, while he was still in the barn with the lights still on. And we were just in there taking care of Buck. It's weird that he wouldn't go out there and check that something's not happening to someone's pet, especially when, like, I'd seen him go out of his way to try and break up a bird fight. And so it was really weird. And he said he got scared by it. He said, yeah, I heard this sound and it scared me, so I turned out the lights and left. Like, you got scared by the sound of an animal being attacked? What do you think we got out here? We, like, coyotes and foxes, and, like, you knew my cats were out there. You were out there with me. You saw me talking to them. They were hanging out back there. They came back to the back of the barn. They left the RV where I left them and came a few yards, followed me over to the back of the barn, and that's where they were, chilling out, waiting for me to get done with David's horse. And I never saw my girl kitten again. And the remains, a couple patches of fur I found, not enough. But there should have been more than that somewhere around there. And I looked for days, and I covered large swath of that island. Like, it's not a huge place to cover. The fact that I found nothing is weird. Is unusual, to say the least. They wouldn't have eaten everything but 2 patches of fur and 1 drop of blood. Which, by the way, if you were inclined to steal someone's cat or something like that, to hold it for a sacrifice for later or something like that, or just because you wanted it as a pet because you thought it was cute or something like that, wouldn't it be hard to, like, get these patches of fur, like, get couple patches of fur off her, maybe, like, 1 little drop of blood, and put it on there, and then just put it somewhere. Oh, yeah, I heard something over there. The fact that I don't think they counted on me, like, going so far as try to track her tracks in the sand, or knowing about kill sites or eat sites, because nobody had any answers for me when I was like, there's no kill site or eat site anywhere. All I found are like 2 little patches of her fur and 1 little drop of blood. And she could easily survive losing 2 little tiny patches of fur and 1 drop of blood. Where's the rest of the blood? Where's, like, I don't know, some teeth or toes or some shit that they didn't want to eat? They did not devour all of her. Where is the rest? They would have left the rest somewhere nearby, probably likely within about a 1/4 mile. And I searched all around there within a 1/4 mile. Not a damn freaking trace. Would they just lick the freaking earth and grass clean of her? Oh, but left like a dead seagull corpse still sitting there that they only like half ate in one of their eat sites? Where's my cat? What the fuck? Someone out there did some shit to my cat. I'm just going to go with my gut. It's not like, you know, again, Spock mind is kind of going like, don't be too accusatory, but like, my gut is also like, rah, rah, rah. And was the whole time. Like, something's not right about this. Something's not right about her disappearing like this. There were plenty of areas out there for her to hunker down in underneath of. Like, lots of little spots she could have wedged herself in where the coyotes wouldn't have been able to get her. Lots of things she could have climbed up where the coyotes wouldn't have been able to get her. And the fact that it looked like that some of the tracks were dog tracks. The fuck, people? Jorge Camacho Rivera, what the fuck did you do to my cat? And I don't think it was just him. Too many people were fucking acting weird around that island. I'm not blaming everyone on that island. But again, some shit was up. And there's a lot of people come and go on that island work-wise, you know? They come, it's a lot of work camping positions around there. So it's like, you come, you work for half a year, maybe a few months, and go. For whatever reason. So, and as far as I know, everybody who was there that I worked with were new. Like, nobody was there that had been there a long time. Maybe the longest person was Jeremy, from what I heard, had been there 2 years. Even the owners had come in after Jeremy. According to Jeremy, like, the owners bought it while he was still working in the barn. And I guess they kept him on as barn manager. He said David walked in the barn one day and he yelled at him like, excuse me, what are you doing in here? And he said, I own the barn. David said to him, I own the barn. And then Jerry's like, oh, okay, well, welcome to your barn. Because it was sold, well, I guess while he was working there. So everybody else, as far as I know, who was working there when I arrived, were newer to the scene than that. A lot of people had only been there a few months. I'm also seeing some weird stuff lining up with, like, my comings and goings. Like, weird coincidences with, like, oh, the time I left, you know, this aligns with the time when I left LA in April and was planning to come back to the East Coast. I'm going to make another video. Sorry, prattling on. But again, just trying to get the information out there, and I'm going to get more concise with this. I'm going to make videos, even if I have to, like, just write down, list the stuff about each topic and each person that really freaking weirded me out, all the connections with my research, the stuff that just does not make sense in terms of common sense. Like, there's no kill site or eat site anywhere within the range of where those coyotes, if coyotes really got her, would have taken her to. The fact that there were certain people who clearly did not want me out there looking for her. For anybody with a little bit of shred of gut instinct. We're going to get into way more detail, though. So, it's just weird shit. I'm going to go get something to eat before this place closes. Good night.